Hi, everyone, once again. Yanko is just about to join us. Just to get us started, I just wanted to just do a quick poll and just see how many of us here attending today are registered as candidates. You can just raise your hand. Hi. Okay, so we've got 5 candidates. Okay, a little bit more. That's great. That's great. That's great. And then just to get one person, please can we mute? Okay. All right. Yeah, you can just put down your hands. That's good. That's great. And then if I can just get one person to unmute and just tell us what has been the most difficult thing with your journey, and what you're looking forward to dispel today. If no one talks, I'll just choose a person. Alexio, are you giving us your understanding of what is difficult in registering?
The Bluetooth device is connected successfully.
Alexio, I think we're having some technical issues.
Hi.
Yes.
Hello. Hi. My name is Makotani.
Yes.
What I'm finding most difficult about registration is to get that pitch between your technical capability, which you have, and the extent of the work that you have done, sort of almost trying to summarize it into a format that speaks both technically whilst giving the complexity of the project. I think that's the one thing, and not going into an essay about it. That's the first thing, and then the second thing I really think is a challenge is the thinking, are they going to accept me? Like the pre-forecasting that takes place, and makes me re-look at my work over and over and over again. So I think that has been my biggest challenge, is to synthesize my work as well as to prevent myself from reaching into the future, and just saying this is enough.
How long have you been working?
Gosh, I mean, I've been working for 14 years.
Oh my gosh.
I know, I'm terrible. I'm terrible. I mean, everyone in my company just gives me the side eye. But yeah, I just haven't registered yet. And I'm really looking forward to Yanko's perspective on it, because I think that might help me build up the confidence, even though I have accolades and I've got projects that I've done, just to say the process is actually this, because I don't think that that's actually happened enough for me. So yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to it.
Yeah. I think, yeah, I understand what you're going through. It also took me quite a while to register. Took me longer than necessary, really, because I also just had the confidence issue. But then I'm hoping after today, when you just look back at the experience that you have, you'll realize that it actually ticks all the boxes. And by the time you get to 14 years, you've been like in a lot of different projects, and then it just becomes difficult to like, which ones do you present as your best? So yeah, actually, hopefully we can just dispel that, and please reach out to me. I can also just help you out there and see how I can help you present it better. is that if that is okay, I'll just take one more person.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure. If one more person could just volunteer and unmute, and let's hear what has been your biggest hurdle and what you're hoping to get out of this today.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Nonjabulo here. I think mine is very similar to the previous speaker. I think leaving the registration process for a long time, it makes it difficult to then choose your best project, and you've worked on so many, and to just try and summarize it to the required number of words that you need to put on your report, because you feel like you need to present everything, but scaling it down to the required number is the challenging part from my end.
Okay,
So,
we'll help you with that one as well. Nonjabulo, thank you so much. If we could get one more person. I see there's a... Yes,
Sorry, my name is Boot. I wonder if I can ask you something.
sure.
I am a fire consultant that my experience is in the fire department for years. And then I started doing fire consultancy. And a couple of my colleagues have tried to submit an application to be registered as a PR Tech. Now, apparently the lady who receives these applications point blank do not allow them to submit for a PR Tech. She said, no, they must register to be a rational designer for fire protection. And that is a huge frustration for us that did not do an engineering degree or an engineering diploma, but comes out of the fire department as a background.
Yanko, are you able to answer that one?
Yeah, so sorry, I lost you a bit there when you were talking, but there is also the special certified professionals category. So I know that one. I'm not too well versed in it, but I do know that it looks at persons like yourself who are like in the fire space, lift Ntontoni. So you'll see in one of the slides, there is just an overview of that special certified professionals category where persons like yourself would be best suited.
Yeah, I do understand that, and that is my problem or my concern. If we do register as a fire rational designer or whatever, you're still not allowed to sign off your own rational design. You still need an engineer to sign off, co-sign with you. And that is not the idea. I cannot understand why somebody who did his national diploma or his BTech degree at the technical and so on can register as a PR Tech if he does mechanical or electrical or whatever. All of a sudden, our fire people cannot do that. You must do the other way, and then you're still reliant on a registered ECSA, PR Tech or PRS. That, I mean, it is crazy. I think it's crazy.
No,
yeah, sure, it's interesting.
We understand. I'm actually just thinking that maybe if Yanko's slides don't quite address what your concern was, you can send us an email and then we'll just connect you to someone at ECSA who can probably help you further.
Thank you. Yeah, that'll be helpful. Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure, but
I think that will help because it's one of those categories that you really come across such. So I think most of us, we tend to focus on the conventional professionals and not really look at that one. But I mean, it is, as Ntombi is saying, we are connected to the individuals or personnel at ECSA, and we can most definitely connect with them just to get some clarity or way forward on what's the best way or step for you to take.
Thank you. Yes, I'm sorry, I can unfortunately not stay to the end. But you got my details, Ntombi, and you can just send it to me via email or whatever.
Okay,
if
if
that's
you could,
possible.
yes, sure. If you could just quickly put in your email address just in the chat box, just for easy access.
I will do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Bud. And then if we could just take one more person just before Yanko gets started. What has been your biggest hurdle and what are you hoping to dispel or achieve today?
Okay, hi.
Mine is
Yanko.
Dwalin. Hello.
Oh, hello.
Hello.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I think the lady was first and then we'll just do you, David, afterwards.
All right, thank you. So yes, my name is Bercy. I've actually been working since 2009. I think it's actually now at 14 years also. And my biggest issue has been that my BTech is with I did a construction management BTech. And then over the years, I've been told that it's quite difficult to get registered with a BTech of construction management. I think that's something else that has sort of put me off, number one. And then number two, I've worked the company that I'm working for, I'm just actually working in the asset management space. So I haven't done that much design work. So I think that's another hurdle that I've had along my journey. And now I just need to get registered because it's one of the requirements to get promoted at work. So yeah, I need another motivation is that I need the salary adjustment. Yeah, thank you.
Makes sense, makes sense.
Yes.
Thank you. I'm hoping that Yanko covers that then also in the slides, but if it's not fully covered, please can you also send us your email address and then we'll just get someone, we'll just connect you to someone from ECSA to address that. And then the last person, David, please come through.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm David Dikotla. I'm working as a assistant RE in the public space. I'm working for the Department of Roads and Transport. Yes, like I'm saying, it's the public space. So my frustration is, it's one, the exposure is there, but knowing the public space, usually we would outsource most of our work, so the exposure is there, but my frustration is just in the especially when there's knowing the public space, there's not much of registered personnel, and then for mentorship purposes. Yeah, so the frustration is just that get started with the registration process. Yeah, so I just need to get clarity on that, especially within the public space, because it's very difficult working hand in hand with the consultants. Yeah, so I just need clarity in terms of mentorship and everything, just initiating that process. And how do I get to get the mentorship that's required from ECSA? Thank you.
Thank you, David. I think we'll definitely cover that with Yanko. So if I may just introduce our speaker and presenter today. Her name is Yanko Banda, a professionally registered civil engineer. She is currently a project manager. She'll also just give us a brief overview of her career and how she just got to where she is. And if I can just hand over to you then, Yanko, to take over. Thank you so much. My apologies, Yanko. One more thing. If you've got questions, please do put them in the chat box. I'll just keep noting it, but we'll reserve questions for the very end of her presentation. Thanks.
Okay, can you just give me sharing rights? I don't seem to have sharing rights. Tombi?
Yes, Yanko. Let me see.
Can you just grant me sharing rights? I don't seem to have them.
Sure. In the meantime, maybe you can just tell us about your career thus far and how you got to where you are right now.
All right. Good afternoon, was it? Good evening, everyone. As indicated, my name is Nyanko Banda. I am a professionally registered civil engineer. My area of specialization is transportation, with the focus being on traffic engineering and transportation planning. I've been in the industry. This year was my 11th year working in the space. Okay, there we go. So I've worked in various roles. I've worked mainly in the private sector, where I worked for 2 consultants, and currently I'm with a contracting company, but not contracting as in construction contracting, but more contracts management and transport infrastructure management. The company is called Tolcon, and I'm the project manager for the Gauteng Freeway Management Systems. In terms of qualifications, I graduated from WITS in 2011. Took a bit longer than envisaged to obtain the degree, but eventually I did obtain it. I'm in the process of attempting to complete my postgraduate studies. I've attempted at UCT, but I think like many life challenges, as we all know, it hasn't gone quite as smoothly as I would have liked. So since entering the industry in 2011, I've been an active volunteer and contributor in the industry, mainly through the Consulting Engineers of South Africa Young Professionals Forum, where I was part of the committee from 2012 when I entered the industry up until 2022, when I actually left the consulting engineering space and moved to the company that I'm at now, which is not a consulting firm. And during that time, I served in various positions, secretary, treasurer, eventually becoming the national chairperson of the CISA YPF. And then subsequently, when I left, I had to resign as I was not in the consulting space. I volunteer with SAIC, predominantly with the student chapters, where I am an industry mentor and support. So whenever they have initiatives like these, either I will participate or I'll hook them up with industry mentors. I do something similar with St. Stephen's. So mentoring is something that I do quite extensively. I've been doing it since I think I became confident in some of my abilities. When people ask, I do try share whatever little knowledge I have with professionals in the industry. And then in 2021, after obtaining my registration in March, because I registered on March of 20, I started doing quite a number of initiatives with ECSA. One of them was the hashtag I'm an engineer campaign, where talking from my own personal experience, I tried to explain from my point of view how I understood outcomes, especially Group A outcomes, because if you get the Group A outcomes wrong, in essence, everything else kind of like doesn't fit in, because if you're not solving the root cause of your problem, then you're not really working at the level that you should be working at. So I've done quite a number of initiatives with the Engineering Council, also doing something similar like this, just sharing my experience towards registration. And yeah, and indicated I am a peer mentor. So there are quite a number of individuals who will ask me to assist with it be report preparing for the interview. So what I found beneficial when I was about to register was that one of my friends or two of my friends actually walked me through my presentation. So it helped structure it, because the way I was going to do it, I don't think so I felt that helped me. And something time permitting, I do try to interview dry runs with candidates, just also pre the type of questions you could get the interview. And then most recently in 2022, I was nominated by a colleague to enter the Women of Stature competition, and I entered in the Women in Engineering category, and to my surprise, I actually ended up winning an award. Through that, there was a mentoring aspect, and I think because we did quite a good job in the mentee, I'm now the board member running the mentoring portfolio on the Women of Stature Foundation. So that's me in a nutshell. And then in terms of, okay, I think I skipped. So in terms of what we're going to cover, I figured we'll first look at who is the Engineering Council of South Africa, how do they regulate the profession, then we'll look at registration, focusing on the two streams. So most of you, I think, you've been in the industry quite long, so you do know about the candidacy program, candidacy stream. But for those who don't know, I'll just touch a bit on what is required to register as a candidate and what you need to do during that candidacy phase until you are ready to register as a professional engineer. Then when you get to the professional engineering, we'll also try and look at the various requirements or things you need to cover to make sure that by the time you get called for your interview, you are ready. So I'm not going to touch on the interview because that's like a whole other topic on its own. Time permitting, I might share some tips from how I observe my interview process and what having helped other individuals they find is also beneficial. And then I'll just explain some of the things that I believe will help professionals like yourselves gain the relevant experience to ensure that they register, and some of the lessons that I've learned, with just some parting shots to encourage you, ladies and gents, on this journey. So for those of you who don't know who is ECSA, ECSA is a regulatory body, and how it came about is that according to Section 22 of the Constitution of the Republic, every citizen has a right to choose the trade, occupation, or profession freely, and the practice of a trade, occupation, or profession may be regulated by law. So South Africa then chose to regulate the engineering profession, and then this then gave rise to the Engineering Professions Act of 2000, known as Act number 46 of 2000. And through this Engineering Professions Act, a juristic person, we say person, but like a body that was going to ensure that people practicing in this space are regulated or adhere to the laws of the country, was formed, and this council became known as the Engineering Council of South Africa. And one of the ways that ECSA ensures that it regulates the profession, one of the tools that it uses is registration. So where the council fits in the bigger scheme of things, so you will see here that I'm just showing a high level overview. So there are 6 built environment councils that report to the built environment, and then the CBE reports to the Department of Public Works and Industry. So the one that we fall in, so these are the 6 industries, but I'll mainly focus on the one that we fall under, which is the Engineering Council of South Africa, and how the Engineering Council looks to regulate the industry. One of the means that it does or looks at to regulate the industry, besides accreditation, by accreditation meaning that the institutions we study at, the material that they're teaching us, ECSA accredits and says that it is suitable to be taught to candidates who will eventually become professionals in the industry. So once you've then gotten your qualification, one of the other ways that ECSA then regulates the profession is through registration and ensuring quality assurance. And this is above managing us as professionals, our conduct in the profession, and ensuring that as registered professionals, we are continuously developing ourselves professionally. So I'm just going to switch off my camera just in case for bandwidth. Like indicated earlier, registered persons will fall typically into 3 categories. So right now, if you are not registered, you'd fall under the category of a candidate. And under the category of a candidate, we have 3 subcategories, which is the engineer, engineering technologist, certified engineer, and the engineering technician. A bit later on, we will look at what are the academic requirements for these and what you then register as once you want to become professional. Then from that, you can then become a professional. So obviously, if you're a candidate engineer, become a professional engineer. If you're a candidate engineering technologist, professional engineering technologist, and likewise, all the other candidacy categories. And then as we were talking with the gentleman earlier, there is a specified category where for persons like the gentleman who explained that they are in the profession, but they're not necessarily doing some of the work that you'd say the typical engineer would do. There is a specified category that is also allocated for persons working, whether it be in fire protection, lifting inspectors or machinery inspectors, and. But like the gentleman said, it seems there's a bit of a gap somehow, some way, because as much as they register, it seems they're not getting to sign off. So we'll look into that, and hopefully in a next session, or I don't know when we have something similar, we'll then be able to give a better or a more comprehensive response as to why did ECSA decide to follow this path, and are they considering maybe allowing such candidates to, or such professionals to sign off on their work because they have deemed or they have demonstrated competencies in those spaces. So we'll look into that and revert at a later stage. So in terms of registration, so this is just a high-level overview of the process that I'll be explaining, the road to registration. So the first stage is that you need to meet the qualification aspect of eventually heading towards being a professional engineer. And in order to meet the engineering education requirement, you need to have undergone an accredited program. So this can be done at a university of technology, etc. And then once you graduate, you then become a candidate. You can register as a candidate. So you don't have to register as a candidate immediately when you come into the profession. Usually it is advisable, especially if you're with a company that has a CNU, but some people, you find that maybe they're not with a company that has signed a CNU, which is a commitment and undertaking, so they don't register immediately as a candidate. They register when they want to be a professional. The main difference between this is that your fees will be slightly different because you haven't been paying well, ECSA does not have assurance that you've been in the system acquiring the experience that is required. So it's just a financial aspect, but you can register basically without having registered as a candidate. You can become a professional. That's what I'm trying to say. Then the second stage, once you've acquired your engineering qualification and are now employed by an engineering company, is to meet the professional competencies. So we'll discuss as well what we mean by professional competencies a bit later on. So this is when you are working and acquiring the necessary experience to ensure that you can register as a professional in the allocated time, or just a little bit over the allocated time. Once you feel you've acquired all the necessary experience or can demonstrate competency outcomes, which we'll discuss a bit later on, you then move on to the next stage, which is registering professionally. So you go through the process of submitting, interview, and if you are deemed competent to register as a professional, you now get the honor of using the title PR after your name. However, during this stage, it's also important that you maintain your competence by attending courses that are certified. So it's a lifelong learning process. Once you register, it does not mean that's where it ends. You continuously have to make sure you stay abreast of what's happening in the industry, you imparting knowledge to other up-and-coming professionals. So there's a whole set of requirements to ensure that in the 5-year period, you meet the requirements to renew your professional registration. So it's just showing that you are still an active member of the profession. So as indicated, there are two aspects that one needs to look at when looking to register. The first step is registering as a candidate. So the main thing that is required for one to register as a candidate, it's just an educational requirement. By educational requirement, we mean that you hold an accredited qualification from an accredited institution. So it can be a degree, a diploma, or certificates where you've combined a number of qualifications that are recognized. So I'm sure most of you listening to some of the questions earlier when I joined, I think most of you have been in the industry long enough to know that with the different professional registration categories, there are different accords. And basically what these accords do is that if me as Yanko Panda, for example, I obtain my qualification in Malawi, which is my birth country, there is an international accord with, or Malawi forms part of the international accords within the different categories. So what I then need to do is that I just need to apply with ECSA to check that the qualification that I obtained, my degree that I obtained in Malawi, is it of the same level as the engineering degree here, or according to the standards that South Africa has, would I then be told that my degree obtained in Malawi is actually at a level of a technologist. So the educational requirements are not only limited to South African qualifications. You can still register as a professional if you have obtained your qualification from another country, as long as that country forms part of the international accords. So I won't touch on the accords too much as well, because that's a whole nother topic on its own, but I'd like to believe that most of you are well versed in that. And then the other thing also mentioned is sometimes you find that you have individuals that have been practicing in the industry for a very long time, but maybe the qualification they've obtained, either it has been discontinued or they didn't quite obtain the the degrees or the whatevers, but they've been in the industry and they've been doing courses that can deem them competent persons. So if you can present a combination of the evidence that you qualify to register in one of the three categories, then you can also register as a candidate. But with such conditions, you then have to apply for the academic accreditation, where, as I explained earlier, ECSA will look at what is it that you have been doing, what qualifications you've obtained, how do they link, and to what standard then do they fit according to the academic standards of our country. So yeah, that's it in terms of the candidacy route. And once you register as a candidate, the onus is on you and the company that you are under, but mainly yourself, to ensure that during that period of training, you obtain the relevant experience to make sure that when you are ready to register as a professional, you meet the competencies, or you performing at the required standards to deem yourself competent, So I will go into a bit more detail a bit later on in terms of what are the 11 outcomes that one needs to demonstrate competence on. And then in terms of the three different categories, what do we mean when we say complex engineering problems, broadly defined engineering problems, and the likes. So according to the Engineering Council, once you enter the industry and you are now working and trying to become competent in the area of specialization that you have chosen, ECSA has deemed it unlikely that in under 3 years, a person will be able to demonstrate competence. So the minimum time from when you obtain your qualification to register, the minimum time from when you obtain your registration, being a candidate, obtaining your experience, and then registering as a professional, it's 3 years. But like most of us, I think, know, and even Dombi and the lady earlier was saying that it's also a confidence thing. So personally, I felt like after 5 or so years, one is more comfortable in what they know and what they don't know. But if after 3 years you've had a proper training program, you tick off the boxes, then by all means go for it. ECSA will then say, if you are ticking the boxes and we can see that you are competent and can take responsibility for your actions, they'll definitely register you as a professional. So when we look at the categories that ECSA has, there's three main categories. So apologies to the gentleman who asked the question earlier. As I indicated, most of the time, I think we tend to focus on the three because there isn't really that many individuals falling into that special category. But I think moving forward, it's one of those learning curves that even for myself, it's something that we need to incorporate, even if it's not there. But let's have a look at it and try see how we can best assist those individuals as well. So there are three main categories, as I indicated. It's PR Eng, PR Tech Eng, and PR Techni Eng. And in terms of the qualifications, if you hold a BSc Engineering, B-Eng, B-Eng, which is the Afrikaans version of a B-Eng, or a Master's in Engineering or MSc in Engineering, then you qualify to register as a PR Eng. So this, in terms of your educational duration, it is a qualification that takes between 4 and 5 years. And what ECSA says is that for you to register as a professional, you then need, over and above your 4 or 5 years educational qualification, you need 3 years minimum experience or training to gain the necessary experience. And as a professional engineer, you need to be solving complex engineering problems and performing complex engineering activities. So the next slide or two, I will then touch a bit on what are the differences between complex, broadly defined, and well-defined. Then as a PR Tech Eng, the qualifications that would qualify you to register in a PR Tech Eng category would be an advanced diploma in engineering, a BTech in engineering, or a B-Eng technology in engineering. So yeah, we also, I think that's not as prominent as it was back then when we had some institutions where they taught mainly in Afrikaans, but I do know that some people still have that option. So we show both, so people don't think we're discriminating against the one or the other. In terms of this, it can take between 3 years and 4 years to obtain your qualification. And then once you have obtained your qualification, you need to be actively working in the industry for about 3 or 4 years and solving broadly defined engineering problems and performing broadly defined engineering activities. And then the last category is the PR Techni engineering category. And for this, it's mainly people who get the national diplomas or certification and so forth. And then this takes about 2 to 3 years to study to get the certificate. Then you need to be working for about 3 to 4 years and solving well-defined engineering problems and performing well-defined engineering activities. And like I mentioned earlier, ECSA does also accredit the academic programs taught at institutions. So you need to make sure that when you are getting your undergrad qualification, you are attending an accredited institution that is recognized or that has been evaluated to say that whatever they are teaching you will be sufficient for you to eventually register after the 4 or 5 years. And maybe just for interest's sake, I know there's a lot of talk where individuals who registered as technologists and have a master's will ask or say that can they not register as a PR? So I queried this with the council, and what I was advised in terms of this is that if you have a PR Tech qualification, then you go on to do a master's in engineering, whether it's in a specific field or those engineering management masters. What you need to do is that you need to apply to ECSA for an academic accreditation, because then that will determine the masters that you've done. Was it at a level that can allow you to register as a professional engineer, or you did it at a level of a technologist, meaning it was at a broadly defined level. So if you do a predominantly coursework masters, chances of you being able to register as a PR eng, if you have a PR Tech eng, are fairly good versus someone who does dissertation research, predominantly research, because hence they say you have to go through the academic accreditation because they have to see what was your master's in. Is it relevant to the field that you are specializing in? Is it relevant to what is happening in the industry for them to then say, okay, we can allow you to then register as a PR eng. But it's not as easy. So it's worth a try for those who want to, but it's not like something that's automatic. You know, you have to really have shown that the master's program that you attended was really at a level that was above the technologist level. So in terms of the outcomes and degrees of responsibility, so when you start writing up your reports and the engineering report and the training and experience reports or outlines, those of you who've actually read the documents, you will see that there's something called outcomes and there's something called degree of responsibilities. So in terms of outcomes, we have 11 outcomes that have been grouped into 5, 6, so it's group A to E. I will go into how they've been grouped in these sets and what is it that the council is looking for when they're saying that you must demonstrate competence in these 11 outcomes. And maybe just to also explain that those of you who've been working I think for more than 15 years, you might have, maybe if you've been trying or you've been reading up on the documents, you will note that there has been a change in the registration system. With the old registration system, it focused mostly on the project life cycle, which made it a bit difficult for certain individuals to register, like myself, as a traffic and transport planning engineer. I'm mainly involved in the planning stages of projects. It's very rare that I'd get to a point where I do tender evaluations or preparing tender documents, going out to sites, you know, monitoring, and eventually closing out. So hence the council then decided to look at outcomes. So meaning that irrespective of which space you are in, as long as you are solving problems that can demonstrate that you are ticking the boxes of these 11 outcomes, then you should be able to register as a professional in the category that is aligned to your undergraduate qualification. Hence now, even with the identification of engineering work, there is a big push to get everybody registered, including academics or individuals in the private sector, because like the gentleman said, it's not that you are not solving problems when you are there. It's just making sure that you are solving problems at the right level. And I'll touch on what are some of the ways you can circumvent the challenges you encounter as individuals, let's say in the public sector, where you might not have a registered person to be working under, yet you are working with consultants who would have such professionals. So when you look at the 11 outcomes for the 3 different categories, you will realize that the gist of demonstrating competence in these outcomes is the same, but the thing that differs is the descriptors. So like I said earlier on, for engineers, it's complex engineering problems. For technologists, it's broadly defined. For technologists, it's well-defined. So here you have to ask yourself when you trying to see if the level you're working at is suitable. We'll touch on it in the next slide or two. Is the problem that I'm solving, is it an engineering problem? What is the nature of the problem that I'm solving? What are the characteristics of this problem in terms of the engineering definition? As you are looking at solving that problem, while you're investigating, analyzing, and finding the solutions, what are some of the challenges that you are encountering during this process? And then what is the decision-making process that is going on while you are trying to solve this problem? You know, are you looking at international best practice? Are you consulting senior professionals? Are you consulting manuals? Even if you consult the manual, maybe having gone to sites, do you have an understanding of the space that you're dealing in so that you can then explain why you might deviate maybe from guidelines. Because remember, the standards that we use are JHS guides. They're not saying this is exactly how something should be. So this is where decision making comes in, and this is one of the outcomes where you need to demonstrate that as much as this was happening, I picked up this thing and I made this decision using this thinking process, because that's what eventually demonstrates your competence, and that's what ECSA is looking at. And when I mentioned competence, it's basically you showing that you have an appreciation of how things work in the space that you are in and how they affect society and other disciplines around you. It's showing that you have acquired the knowledge in the space that you are in. It's showing that you've acquired the experience, you've been in the space that you're in. You've now built almost like a sixth or a seventh sense in terms of what could work, what couldn't work, why is this happening like this, even before you even start analyzing a problem. Sometimes when you've acquired the knowledge and the experience, you are able to actually even predict an outcome, and this is where you demonstrate your capabilities, because now you've been in that space and you've developed that sixth sense about the space, or that you have decided to develop your expertise in. And then another aspect that you need to look at when you are busy looking at the experience that you are gaining is how you progress in terms of the responsibilities that you are given. So like I said, because your degrees of responsibilities and the 11 outcomes are grouped, the groups are labeled the same. The 11 outcomes are labeled A to E. The degree of responsibility is also labeled A to E. Don't confuse the two when you're filling in the forms in terms of what the outcome competencies mean and what the degree of responsibility competencies mean. So I'll touch a bit on that as well in the presentation. So I tried to simplify it as much as possible in terms of what is it that we mean by level descriptors of the various categories and what we mean by degree of responsibility. So there are 4 steps that one would follow when they're trying to solve the engineering problems and developing themselves to eventually demonstrate the 11 outcomes. So the first step for all the categories, if you recall in the previous slide, I said the base of the problem solving is the same. What differs is the level descriptor. So for engineering PR engines, you need to be solving complex engineering problems. For technologists, you need to be solving broadly defined engineering problems. For technologists, technicians, you need to be solving well-defined engineering problems. So with these 4 steps, I'll try to show the differences between the 3 different engineering categories that one can register in. So step 1 is identifying the engineering problem, and then this also links to your group A outcomes, because finding the exact root cause of your problem, that's when you are solving the problem. It means even if something looks on face value that this is the issue, sometimes you need to go a bit deeper, because it's like when you have a sore. If it's a deep one in this pus, you don't just put a bandage on it. If you go to the hospital, they're going to remove all that pus out, scrape it out, put some form of antiseptic, and then cover it with a bandage. So this is what you're trying to do basically with the step 1, identifying your engineering problem. So with complex engineering problems, you have to ask yourself, does me solving this problem require an in-depth fundamental and specialized engineering knowledge? So if you answer yes to that, then it means you're solving problems that are complex. It's not something that can easily be solved. It's not like you just have one solution and that's it. If that's your case with the problems that you're solving as an engineer technologist, then you must know that you're not working at the level you should be working at. You're actually working at a technician level. So for a technologist, you ask yourself, does solving the problem require a coherent or a detailed engineering knowledge? And is it linked to some sort of technology? So sometimes what that means is that it's not that you solving a problem that has not been solved before. Maybe there is something that is there, you're just going to tweak it a bit. Then you know that you're working at a broadly defined level. And then looking at well-defined engineering problems, you ask yourself, the problems that I'm solving, are they practical? Do they require practical engineering knowledge, which is pinned on some sort of theory? So as I mentioned earlier, if you look at the problem, if there's multiple solutions for you to look at to get to the best one, then that determines the complexity of it. So if you have just one solution or two solutions, know that you are working at a well-defined level, because it is just a practical thing that you need basic engineering knowledge. There's theory that you can go to and it will immediately answer your question. Moving on to broadly defined, you find that now you need to start looking a bit more, you need to go into a bit more detail. You need to start looking at what applicable technologies can help me solve this problem. Whereas with complex engineering problems, you might find that sometimes the problem is unfamiliar. It's something you have not encountered before, or it's something that's not encountered frequently. So there's not that much data or information on it. So you have to dig a bit deeper to get to the final solution. So step 2, in terms of identifying the descriptor, is establishing the level of complexity that your problem under step 1 is at. So for engineering problems, you have to ask yourself, is my problem ill-posed? Do I have very little information? Do I still need to identify certain things that still need to be refined? So how I like to explain this is, sometimes you get a scope for a client where they say, we have a congestion problem. Okay, you have a congestion problem. So what is what is the issue that you've identified? So then when you have to start looking at what is it exactly that you want me to do? What do you want me to look at? How is it affecting this? If there isn't that information, if it's missing that information, then that is how you then able to determine your complexity. That if there's a lot of information missing and my problem involves a lot of components, and within it there's also sub problems, and like I said earlier, you might find that it's also something that is not very common maybe in South Africa or the space that you might be working with. It's an unfamiliar problem. Sorry, someone is unmuted. Someone is unmuted. Thank you. It's an unfamiliar problem, and you might find that you have to look now, beyond the textbooks that you've studied. Then you know that the problem is quite complex. Then looking at broadly defined, it also can be ill-posed or over-specified, but this is pinned again to technology. So there might be something in the market that might help you solve the problem. It does also have some complexities, as it might have sub issues to it, but they're not as many as engineer would typically encounter. And you might find that there are some innovations that are already out there that can help you solve that problem. So then you know that you're working, or you can then say that to start solving this problem, I can start looking at these technologies. Then for a well-defined, as indicated, you find that most of the information is already there, and it's usually something that is routine or frequently encountered, and it could be familiar. So there is complexity, but it's not to a higher degree. It's like there's a lot of information on the market for you to find the best solution for your problem. The third step is to determine the complexity of the path that you'll follow. So like I said, with engineering solutions, that if you have a problem and it's not, you have multiple solutions, and now you have to determine which is the best solution based on various aspects, then you know that you are working at a complex engineering level. You're solving complex engineering problems, or you're working at a required level for an engineer. And sometimes you find that the solutions that you have to come up with are not within the standards or codes. Remember earlier on, I also said that sometimes when you have an understanding, or when you're well versed in the space that you are in, you are then able to also say, I'm very familiar with this area, therefore I know that even though the standard says this, actually it might be better to work at this level. And you can argue your case with an approving authority and actually get approval on that. Then you know you're working at complex engineering problems. You're solving complex engineering problems. With broadly defined, as I said, it's almost similar to engineers, just that maybe the solutions, some of them might be more obvious than others, and some might be solutions you encounter on a regular basis. If we refer to standards or codes, you are then able to solve your problem, you know. And then with well-defined, I'm not going to go into all the details. We can make the presentation available as well to individuals so that you can go through it in detail. And I can be contacted outside of this session just to see how we can best assist you. Then with well-defined, like I mentioned, these ones are usually very straightforward. If you go to codes, everything is there. You're working within your limits. You're not working or thinking outside the scopes that you need to be working in. Your solutions are definite. You know that this is the problem. I just need to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like the solution is obvious. There might be some originality required, but it's pretty much straightforward. So then you know you're working at well-defined, you're solving well-defined engineering problems. And then the fourth step is to determine your level of decision making. So this then requires you to use judgment based on now the experience that you've acquired, you know, consulting and the material that you have then gathered. You are then able to make the decisions that are relevant to your problem. So with complex engineering solutions, the decisions that you make, sometimes you might find that you are actually setting the tone for how something is going to be done in future because it's something that has not been encountered. So that's when you know that you're working at a complex level. With broadly defined, your solutions or your decision-making process will be very practical. This is my problem. These are the steps I went. This is the guidelines I used, and this is how I came to my final solution. Similarly, with well-defined, it's practical. It's just using your practical judgment. If A happens, B should happen. I've evaluated. My evaluations show me that what I've observed or what the problem is, what I've done is exactly as the textbooks or the standards say, and it works. So I hope that kind of explains a bit in terms of what are the differences. So for complex engineering problems, your solution might not be straightforward, and it might not be you might not have one solution right away. You might have a multitude of solutions that you then need to do a process of elimination to get to the final solution. With broadly defined, you'd also have a multitude, but it's not as many as the ones required for an engineer. So looking at the outcomes, as I explained earlier, the council has grouped the 11 outcomes into 5 sets. So the 5 sets are known as Group A, B, C, D, and E. Group A, which are the most critical ones. Ladies and gentlemen, Group A outcomes are what make or break your submission in essence. And Group A outcomes is basically solving engineering problems. So as I explained, the reason why I explained the descriptors is that, for example, if I say for Group A1, define, investigate, and analyze, if you are working at engineering level, it would be complex engineering problems. Technologists, broadly defined engineering problems. So by understanding what is the requirement or what level you need to be solving the problems, then you make sure that when we're looking at the engineering problem and trying to solve it, you are solving problems at your level. So Group A has 3 subgroups. The first one being define, investigate, and analyze. So by define, investigate, and analyze, what this simply means, ladies and gentlemen, is identifying the root cause of your problem that will have an impact. So for example, I'm in the transport space. I worked on a project where we had sinkholes forming. So how I like to explain it is that, yes, you have a sinkhole forming, but it's not just as simple as, yes, we have a sinkhole, we're just going to pump concrete in, fill it up, and then problem solved. You have to look at the environment. If you look at the environment, the problem that you need to, that you're looking at, the solution you come up with must be relevant for the prevailing conditions. So my area was Ekurhuleni. In Ekurhuleni, the soil material or the geometric material is dolomite. Carltonville gets sinkholes, but they have silty sand material. So how we go about as an engineer in Ekurhuleni and in Carltonville, we're solving the same problem, which is sinkholes, but how we go about solving it will differ. So that's why I say that with these outcomes, it's about identifying what is the root cause that will have an impact, looking at the prevailing conditions. So I hope that is clear in terms of defining your problem. Another example in terms of defining, the one I mentioned earlier, a client might come and say, for me as a traffic engineer, there is a congestion problem here, solve it. Immediate solution that might come to mind, if it's a, let's say, stop controlled junction, might be install traffic signals. Maybe there are already traffic signals there, but you find that when you start looking deep into the problem, meaning you end up going to site, doing your site investigations, you do desktop studies, and site investigations are very key, ladies and gentlemen, because from such investigations, you get to talk to the people or the locals, and you get to understand problems that might not be visible on the day you conduct a site investigation. So it's very important as well that when you're doing your investigations, you incorporate some sort of or some element of site investigation. And from going to site, maybe I noticed that when I looked at this area, there's only one way in and out. And when you look at this signal, there's another signal maybe 500 meters down, and you pick up that a lot of cars, this traffic signal maybe opens for a longer time than this one. So now you find that actually the problem is not necessarily that you just need to install signals or if it's a stop controlled. If there's already signals, how do you optimize them? Maybe the two signals are not synchronized. So you find that one is opening for a longer period than the other, or the amount of time allowed. So when you get these vehicles coming in, these vehicles that pass during a longer duration at the previous, when they get here, they get stuck, and then this traffic signal is opening for a shorter period. So now I'm able to identify that the issue is actually your signalization. So that is me now saying, in order to solve your problem, it's not adding another lane. It's not trying to find another entrance or exit into this space. It's actually just synchronizing your signals, for example. Or you might find, like with this one, maybe the signals are working fine, but now I actually determine the problem why you have congestion here is because you have a large volume of vehicles having to go in and out of an area, and this is the only entrance or exit. So maybe so now what I propose as a solution is to say, where are they way in and out of here? And then that's when you start researching and you start looking at future developments, because you might find that maybe there's a future planned access that is planned, future access that is planned. So that might be the solution that you might propose to your client to say, to solve this problem, this is what you actually need to do. So I hope that kind of explains what I mean by saying identify the root cause that will have an impact for the prevailing conditions. Then we have A2, which is designing and developing solutions at the, I'll use engineer because it's the first one, but put in the descriptor that's relevant for you at complex engineering problems. So design and develop, like I said, you then start looking to say which this is the problem. What are the solutions that I can use to solve this? So with that one I explained earlier, it was either synchronizing signals, or it's widening a road, or it's finding an alternative entrance and exit point. It might be changing the signal, it might be changing the intersection to something else, whether it be a traffic circle or whatever. So those are the solutions that I have. So now from that, I then comprehend and apply knowledge. So now you look at guidelines, you use softwares, you look at what is existing, is the future planning put in place, and to try solve this problem for the client, you know. And as I mentioned, the key thing about Group A outcomes identifying the root cause. If you can identify the root cause, then you will definitely be solving the problem and demonstrating competence for Group A. And this also is a process of showing the process of elimination to get to a suitable solution. Then when you look at Group B outcomes, this is managing engineering activities. So by managing engineering activities, the council said there are two outcomes you need to demonstrate here, named B4 and B5. So B4 is managing part or all of one or more complex engineering activities. And B5 is communicating clearly with others in the course of engineering activities. So managing part or all, it means when there's a problem or an aspect of a complex engineering problem, you are the one managing that thing. For example, when I worked on the roads project, I was responsible for finding a geotech specialist to come out and conduct the tests that would be required. The geotech engineer then advised what would be the best solution. Based on that, I would do a process of elimination to say, these are the solutions. This is the best one because of whether it's cost, whether it's time, whatever constraints are defining or helping you get your decision, you indicate what are those. And then this is how I went about managing it. So you oversaw the compaction, you tested. If it was not done correctly, you rejected the works. When certain procedures were not followed, you made sure that these procedures were followed by communicating to the relevant persons. So that's how you show that you are managing part or all of. So you need to be involved in the process of problem solving for the problem that is given to you. And then in terms of communication, communication can be verbal, can be written. It can be your presentations, it can be the meetings. So this is where you now show that, like I mentioned in my example, I found the geotech engineer. So the communication was verbal because the geotech came in, they gave me the report, but it was also written because from the written report, I had to interpret what would be the best solution and communicate it to the contractor to say, this is the solution we're going to implement. We need to get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in meetings, how you communicate on site, those who work on site, the letters that you write, your site instructions, your non-conformance reports, those are also forms of communication. So the key thing that you need to be demonstrating with Group B outcomes is management and communication. So management in the sense that I am in charge of one or more activities at the level that I need to be working at. And I'm foreseeing everything, or I'm involved from start to end. I'm making the decisions. I'm telling people what to do. I'm communicating via these formats, and I'm ensuring that we get the job done. Group C outcomes is the impacts of engineering activities, and then this looks at so there's two of them here, and here you need to be able to recognize and address the reasonable, foreseeable social, cultural, and environmental effects at your level, as well as meet all legal and regulatory requirements. So here, what you need to demonstrate is identifying risks before they happen and putting in mitigation measures. So for example, if you're on site, a risk that is a typical risk that is identified is personnel having the correct PPE. If personnel don't have the correct PPE, it's either you stop the work and make sure they have the correct PPE, so you're putting in the mitigation measures, or you find the contractor to make sure that they ensure that they personnel have the correct PPE. So it's basically foreseeing a risk and trying to put in measures. Obviously, you can't foresee all risks, but once you identify the risk, the key thing is that you then put in the measures, and you make sure that the measures you put in, they are within legal and regulatory requirements. So with Group C outcomes, this is where construction regulations are very important. And what you need to demonstrate here is that you are cognizant that whatever you are doing will have some sort of impact, whether it be a social impact, a cultural impact, or environmental impact, but there will be an impact that you have tried to minimize the effect of in this manner, and using the OSH Act, and. So this is what you need to demonstrate with Group C outcomes. With Group D outcomes, there's 3 of them. It's about acting ethically, exercising judgment, and taking responsibility. I think these are fairly straightforward. In terms of acting ethically, I mean, it's just about being honest and showing integrity. So if a contractor, for example, with me having worked on site, if the contractor tried to bribe me or wanted me to turn a blind eye to something, the onus is on me to preserve the dignity of the industry and actually refute, call out that bribe. And if I have to report that particular contractor, report the contractor, whether it be to the client, and let them take the steps, but you make sure that you are not compromised in any way. And then by exercising sound judgment, it's what I explained earlier to say that as much as there are guidelines, sometimes you can deviate from the guidelines. A simple example, when I worked on site, one of the projects that I oversaw was fencing across the site. So according to the project scope, they wanted us to close off the fence. They wanted us to close off the community and kind of force people to go cross at safe areas, being the signalized junctions. But what we noticed when we were on site is that there were certain points where you found that there was a footpaths. So wherever you see a footpath, it shows that there's a high pedestrian movement. So from that, I was able to discuss with the client engineer and say to them, to ensure that this fence is not damaged, how about we actually have openings where we observe high pedestrian movement? And fortunately, those places where we observed high pedestrian movements were fairly close to the safe crossing areas. So with that note, having shown that and having explained that the reasoning behind this is that we don't want the fence to be damaged and then stolen, or for whatever, whatever other challenges we might encounter, the engineer then agreed to say, actually, that's a good idea. We want this thing to be there for a long time. We do know there's a problem of theft, but in the interim, for as long as it's there, let's actually ensure that it is at a quality that we would like as the department. So that is how you can also demonstrate exercising sound judgment, making a decision and actually standing by it, taking responsibility for that decision. Yeah. And then the final one is the initial professional development. So, ladies and gentlemen, before you register, when you're a candidate, you don't have to do courses that require you to get points. So hence it's called initial professional development, because you are still developing yourself. And here you're undertaking initial development activities to maintain and extend your competence. So these activities can be on-the-job training, can be you attending technical trainings, can be post-grad studies. So it's anything that is done to develop and grow your expertise in your field of that you have chosen to specialize in. And not everything has to be CPD accredited in this category. CPD comes in once you register professionally, because CPD is continuous professional development. So you are continuously learning and making sure you're staying abreast with what is required of you or the changes in the industry. Then earlier I did explain that there's also something called degree of responsibility. So while meeting those 11 outcomes, you need to ensure that your responsibility levels increase. So there are 5 degrees of responsibility.
Bianco,
Yes.
if I may just come in, I'm just looking at the time, and if we can just wrap up the presentation maybe in the next 10 minutes, just to allow for some questions.
Yes, allow Q&A.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yes, I'm also looking at it, so I'm almost done. Yeah. So in terms of degrees of responsibilities, it's A to E. So initially, when you're a candidate, you're just being exposed. Basically, you are just observing. You're not doing much. You don't have any responsibility. Yours is just to pay attention, see what is happening. Your mentor explains to you what is the challenge, how they're gonna go about it. Then after a few months, you should be able to start assisting. So now this is you performing specific tasks, but under close supervision. So for example, they might say, please correlate these type of drawings to give to the contractor. So now you're assisting with putting certain information together, or you are doing certain research that will go into finding the optimal solution for the problem at hand. Your responsibilities are still limited, and you have a supervisor or a mentor who still coaches you and gives you feedback. This process for A and B, assisting and being exposed, that takes about 6 to 12 months for most people. That's when you can confidently show that your responsibilities are shifting from just observing to doing something and taking some responsibility, but not full on. Then from assisting, you move on to participating. This is where you now start performing certain tasks, still supervise. And what happens now when you start participating is that you find that you are now feeding back to your supervisor. So your supervisor is not giving you the solution. They're mainly monitoring what is it that you're coming up with. Then you start contributing. So this is where you start working more or less independently. So you take full responsibility, you supervise, you make the decisions, but obviously still in consultation with your supervisors, but you are making the decisions. And then you have to perform an outcome, a degree of responsibility E. So this is now you fully running the show. Basically, your supervisor can leave you and they know that you're going to get the job done. They just do high-level checks, but they know that the quality you are producing is at the required standard. So from my own personal experience, how one can ensure that they gain the relevant experience, okay, this is going backwards, is that, ladies and gentlemen, please read the forms on the ECSA portal. If you go to the ECSA portal under registration, all the information you need is there. Read the forms. The forms guide you. There's information sheet after each form, how you fill in how they expect you to fill in the TRs or the engineering report. They give you keywords that you need to use those keywords when you are filling in writing up your reports. Be open to learning. Especially when you're starting off, don't limit yourself and say, I only want to do this. You might find that you think you want to do, for example, I thought I wanted to do water. I ended up in transport and actually ended up enjoying it. I did do a bit of water, but I didn't enjoy it as much as I did at tertiary. So be open to learning. Don't think you know everything. Be clear on your goals. But in order for you to be clear on your goals, it is important that you have a program that will ensure that you meet these 11 outcomes. And in order for you to have the program, it's important that either you're with a company that has signed a commitment and undertaking. If you're not with a company that has signed a commitment and undertaking, don't worry, it's not the end of the world. You can still obtain your registration. This can be done through secondment. By secondment, for the gentleman, for example, who's working in public sector, when you're working with the consultants, you can actually request from an employer to say, for a period of, let's say, 6 months, can I go work with this consultant in their design office and be involved in the design of this project so that I see what goes into the thought process to produce whatever it is that they give us. And during that process, the mentor or the supervisor from the consultant who was guiding you can then sign off because they were overseeing everything you are doing. So that's how you can also circumvent the issue of registered personnel in certain spaces. Be committed. It's like a plate of chicken, bacon and eggs. The chicken was involved, the bacon was committed. I'm not saying die for the cause, but fully immerse yourself. Be part of the team. Don't be on the outside and expect to know what's happening. Grow your technical knowledge as much as possible. Don't always wait for information to come to you. Research, learn more, attend courses, talk to people in the spaces that you are in, and then be a person at the end of the 5 years who is responsible for making the decisions. Be confident in the decisions that you are making. And the best way you can be responsible and confident in the decisions you make is by growing your technical expertise. Also, mentoring is the golden thread to ensure that you achieve this. Your mentors don't always have to be in the companies that you are in. You can also have external mentors to help guide. So your mentors don't always have to be in your company, but they need to be aware of what is it that you are doing. So you cannot now come and ask me to sign off on something when I've never worked with you. I can't vouch for you. So don't also compromise people because now you are desperate to register. Rather see what is the best way. Is it through the secondments? Is it through me leaving the space that I'm in and actually working in a space like a consultant or contracting company so that I gain this experience, then I can come back to the space that I'm in because I love that space? Do that. It's just a temporary setback for you to achieve your final outcomes. Okay, I won't go too much into this, but basically just to say the onus is on you to ensure you receive the training that you need. So if you feel you're not getting the experience that you need to meet the 11 outcomes, speak up, speak to your employer, make a noise about it. If you have to move until you get what you need. And get supervisors who can advise you and steer you in the right directions. Ideally, your engineering supervisor should be a professional in the category you want to register in and the field that you are in. And your mentor does not necessarily have to be in the field that you are in, but they can advise or can be sounding boards to help you plan what is it that you want to achieve. I'll explain a bit in terms of how you can also develop a mentoring program during the Q&A. And then as explained, your mentor is just a guide and they offer assistance, but the main person you need to be working hand in hand with is your engineering supervisor. So in closing, ladies and gentlemen, the way to get started is just to quit talking and just to begin doing it. This is what Walt Disney said. So I'd really encourage you to just start writing. Once you start writing, it's then easier to see what is relevant, what is not relevant, where are my gaps, am I actually, do I have enough, too much experience? I struggled, or I felt I wasn't competent, or I delayed my registration because I wasn't writing anything down. So when I started writing, I actually realized that I have more than enough experience, and I was then able to piece the pieces of experience that I'd acquired to show that everything I'd done was actually relevant in the transport space instead of being compartmentalized. So another thing is just to say, put in the work now. I know it's going to seem like it gets tedious, it gets tiring, but just keep on pushing. Once you obtain that registration, the feeling, those who've obtained it will tell you it's very rewarding, it's relaxing, it even encourages you to start doing something else. And then we all know the saying, a luta continua. For those of you who don't know, there's actually more to it. It's called Vittoria Asceta, which just means the struggle continues because victory is definitely certain. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Yanko. For those who want to contact her, please see her details shown on the screen. Because of the time, I'm just going to go straight into the questions. Alexio sent a question saying they have a diploma in civil engineering, 5 years experience. Is it possible to register with ECSA, and what is the procedure? I believe that Yanko covered all of that. Currently, I'm a member of SAICI. Please assist. I want to grow. By the way, I'm Zimbabwean. If you're a member of SAICI, depending on what region you're from, I think you should definitely contact the branch so that you can just get more involved there. But I believe that Yanko has covered all of the questions. Tamron sent a message saying, will the recording be made available? Yes, it definitely will. Ntabeleng asked a question. For instance, if you don't have sufficient design experience, but you do have a master's degree, I think this is a common question. Is one able to register professionally via as a researcher instead of having sufficient design experience? And how does it work? Yanko?
Yes, you can register. Remember earlier on, I did say that with ECSA changing the process to look at outcomes, you just need to demonstrate outcomes in the 11, competencies in the 11 outcomes. So masters is actually also a good thing to show, because with your masters, you have to identify what is your problem. You have to do the research. You have to come up with multiple solutions, start the process of elimination to get to your solution, engage different individuals to obtain certain information or to relay a certain message. So that's like your group B5 outcomes, by researching, looking at international best practices, identifying what are your solutions, doing the process of elimination. That's your group A outcomes. The writing up, engaging different individuals, that's your group B outcomes. Looking at international best practices, how is the solution that you are proposing, how is it affecting society, or how will it better society? Those are group C outcomes. What are some of the problems you've identified, and how do you propose we circumvent this? That's group C outcomes. And eventually with your conclusions and recommendations, that's group D outcome, because you are using your judgment to say, based on all of this information that I've obtained and the studies and the tests and the analysis that I've done, this is the solution that I'm proposing because of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's you demonstrating sound engineering judgment, taking responsibility for the decision that you are making, and because you're also doing a master's, obviously you'll be attending some courses and stuff like that, but even a master's on its own, it's a form of initial professional development. So definitely it's just how you show the problems, because remember, the category you register in is based on your undergrad qualification. So once you've established which category you are in, it's just about showing that I've been able to identify the root cause of my problem for the prevailing conditions. This is how I went about determining the possible solutions. This is how I went about eliminating those that are not relevant. So definitely, but we can chat a bit more about Ntabileng offline, because I know a lot of academics are struggling to see how they need to register. But with outcomes, if you just understand the outcomes, definitely you can register.
Thank you, Yanko. Just as a side note, I'm just focusing on the chat group questions for now. Hopefully in about 15 minutes, we can just take hands. Ndengu is asking if we can share example PRNG reports. What do you think, Yanko? Yanko, are you there?
Having a lovely chat by myself. Sorry, personally, I don't like people I mentor, I don't share my report with them first, because like I said, the forms are self-explanatory. So I prefer a person taking a stab at it first and then giving feedback based on that. And depending on how far off you are or how close you are, then I personally, with my mentees, some of them I share my report with, but I don't like sharing the information beforehand, because I find sometimes people want to mimic or copy exactly what you've done instead of trying to put their best foot forward.
Awesome. I couldn't have said it better myself, because all experience is really different.
Yeah.
Just moving on, Yanko pointed out that when it comes to registering as PRNG, you need to demonstrate that your MEng surpasses the level of your BTech level. Can you provide some insights on how the verification process works?
Okay, I've never done the verification process, but what I do know is that if you go to the website, all the information will be there. But what I do know from an ex-colleague who had to do that. So this colleague this is for a qualification. It wasn't necessarily the master's, but it was a degree. So in Botswana, she's recognized as an engineer. So she got a degree, an engineering degree in Botswana. But because it's an international qualification, she then had to apply for academic accreditation. So there is a process that is followed. So you submit as if you'd submit now for registration, where you submit all the supporting documentation, you submit your qualification, what is it that you've been doing, whatever. Then ECSA sort of processes it the same way they would do your reports. Then based on that, they would then say to you, based on the information and how we've evaluated your accreditation in Botswana, we actually feel your qualification is not at the level of an engineer. In South Africa, you qualify for a technologist. So similar with the masters, depending on the topic you looked at, I'm assuming that your topic will advise the complexity. If it's a problem that was not common, for example, it's not a usual problem that you had to solve. If you remember my definitions of complex engineering, broadly defined and well-defined, you will see that if your master's was in something that is not common, there's not that much information available out there, it's not something you can find in some textbook, there's very limited knowledge on it, then ECSA might actually say you were working at a level higher than what is expected of a technologist, so you can register as a PR Eng. I'm not sure how stringent it is because I haven't done it personally, but it's something I also discovered through someone who asked a similar question because they registered as a tech and they had a master's.
Thank you,
So
Yanko.
the best is just to contact the council. They really do respond. If they don't, we can compile a set of questions and I can send them through. Hopefully we'll get responses and share them with you.
Thanks, Yanko. Figile is asking, can you give us an example of how to write reports? I believe Yanko has answered that. How many reports should one submit to ECSA?
Okay, so it's two types of reports. It's the training and experience reports. If you have experience, if you've been working for less than 10 years, if you've been working for more than 10 years, for most people I actually say 15 years, then you do a training and experience outline. So the difference is that with the training and experience report, it's very detailed. According to how the information sheet at the end of the report tells you, you state what is the nature of your problem, you put an organogram, you state what you were involved in, you state how you communicated, you state what technologies you used, and. Whereas with the training and experience outline, for the first 10 years, you basically bullet point, and your reports need to be signed by a supervisor who's ideally registered in the space that you are in. If your supervisor or one of your supervisors is not in the space you are in, it's not a train smash, but make sure that at least two of your supervisors, especially if you are engineers, are in the space that you are in. If you are technologists, technicians, it has to be three. If you read the forms, you'll see that even with the referees, for engineers, you need two referees. If one of them is a PR tech or technique, then you will need three, and two of those, one of them has to be a PR Eng. For technologists, you'll need three, and technician, you also need three. So those are the two the reports. Then the other one is the engineering report. So the engineering report basically, with the training and experience report, it's all your experience from the time you got your qualification. So for people who have BTech, it's when you got your diploma, you are working and gaining experience. So that experience is also relevant. That's what the TERs cover. So that's the detailed aspect. With the engineering report, out of all the experience you have, you choose at most 2 projects that will demonstrate the 11 outcomes. So how I look at it is that for me, when I did my submission, the construction project, which I did in my second phase of working, that helped me tick a lot of the boxes. And then my last project that I worked on was another one that I used. So trying to use projects that are closer to when you want to register if possible. If not, you can use an earlier one, but let your other project be closer to when you want to register, just to show that you have grown in terms of taking responsibility. Then in terms of determining how many TRs or TOs you have, that's up to you. When I did my mentor did with me is that we grouped my experience. So I had 5 TERs when I submitted and the engineering report. The 5 TERs, what we did was that I would look at my first 2 years when I was a graduate. Then I got seconded or I went to a construction site, so I look at the time on construction site, or when I'm doing construction work, then I got seconded to Auditor General, eThekwini Transport Authority, and all these other places. So I look at my experience when I'm a technical specialist. I came back and I became a design lead. So I look at my experience when I'm a design engineer, and then project management. So I took 2 or 3 projects within the different categories that best showcase my experience, because sometimes you find that you've worked on 15 projects, for lack of a better word. I didn't want to do 15 TERs. I summarized it and just did 5. So it's really up to you how you feel you can best demonstrate your competence, but just make sure you write in first person and you say what you did, and it must be at the level that is required. So it must always be, I was responsible for this, I did this, I came up with this solution, I oversaw this, I proposed this. We don't care that you worked in a team. It's all good and well that we worked in a team, but what did Yanko do as the individual? What was Yanko's contribution to solving this problem? That's what you need to show.
Thank you, Yanko. Just in the interest of
reports,
time,
you can decide.
just in the interest of time, just going forward, I just want to take maybe like 3 questions outside of the chat. If you can just keep your answers short. So there's no like straightforward answer, as you can see with these things. But yeah. So there's one also important question that I think no one else has asked. If someone hasn't seen work to finish, like throughout the phases of a project, then how do they best demonstrate their meeting of the outcomes?
So you mean you didn't see a project from start to finish?
Yes, yes. So they say at work we have different departments. My job ends only at pre-project investigation phase.
Okay, so even if it ends at pre-project investigation phase, remember you're trying to demonstrate outcomes. So with the pre-project investigation phase, what problems are you solving? How are you going about solving for that problem? What is it that you are doing to determine whatever it is that you are doing? Remember, I also said that the challenge we have as transport engineers is that we don't go to sites and whatever not. I was just privileged to do that. So I think try get an understanding of the outcomes and see how you take them off. But whoever it is that asked that question, in the interest of time, please drop me a message on LinkedIn and then we can take it forward.
All right, I'm taking the last question on the chat and then we'll just do hands. If you're in the construction space and you haven't been involved in any designs, they are asking, how do you go about registering?
If you're in the construction phase and haven't been involved in a design, remember on a construction site, you do get design drawings from the design engineer. Sometimes based on what is on the design and what you are experiencing on site, you do need to change somehow, some way. So as long as you can show that this was the design, I noticed that this is the problem and this is what I propose to resolve this problem. It's, ladies and gentlemen, I think move away from the old engineering system that said you had to be in a design office, then you had to go to site. Here you need to look, remember the definition of the outcomes. Define what is your problem on a site. Is the problem the fact that, I'm trying to think of one fairly quickly, that your steel works, maybe the spacing at the bottom is not enough. Then you put stirrups, that's a solution. So it's finding solutions for problems in your immediate space. It's not about being in a design office or even on site. You do get design drawings. If there's something that had to change, that's why you have as-built drawings, because you are now showing what you built versus what you designed. So don't look at it in that way. Look at how are you solving the problems? What are you involved in? How are you proposing way forwards for challenges you're encountering on the site?
Thanks, Yanko. If I may also just add to that one, when you're solving problems on site, you're also applying your engineering principles. So whatever you look at and you see who's okay, this is the principle I'm applying, what the designer has prescribed for this doesn't necessarily work here on site because of XYZ constraints. Therefore, I will use the engineering principle of something, something, something to solve this problem and try my best to achieve what they have designed. So we do it that way. The first hand I have is Piliswa. Please go ahead, keep your question short.
Banda, I think it was raised by mistake.
Okay, thanks, Piliswa. Figile Ngobe.
If you're talking, you're muted.
Okay, he says the mic doesn't work. Please do send a message on the chat. Jean Herba, please go ahead.
Hi, good day, everybody. Hi, Yanko. I just want to ask a
Hi.
question. It was a question that was raised in the chat. I just want to elaborate or just get some more information regarding that. If you're in the maintenance space, how do you get about registration as you do not do designs? I think we've covered the designs, but maintenance is a general. What is your opinion regarding that?
If in the maintenance space, I think it would be what type of problems are you doing in that space? But sure. Because this one also looks at the category that you are in. Because sometimes, what qualification do you have? Is it a diploma or what?
Yes, I have a BTech and PMP certified.
Okay, yeah, because now you see the problem with you being in the maintenance space is that I think the level you're working at is not the one that you should be in. But if you're working in that, you might find that maybe some of the stuff you're doing might put you under that the special category. So I just need to check in terms of that because I think you're not the only one. I think you might be having a similar challenge as the earlier gentleman. I'll have to like inquire on that and get back to you.
So
I'm actually not
maybe if I
sure.
can just give you a little bit of scope. If
Mm.
we look at, say, scope changes regarding maintenance, it's becoming a bigger problem. I think scope changes is like the way out in terms of capturing all the 11 outcomes. I think that's maybe the reason why I'm asking, because at projects with a lot of scope changes, we can implement now our engineering knowledge regarding the 11 outcomes, and I think that's maybe the route.
Yes, definitely. As long as you show that this is that you name definitions, it also look at how the problem is posed. If it's ill posed and you have to get certain information, then you should be able to demonstrate those 11 outcomes. Yeah, definitely.
100%, but I'll make in contact with you. Thank you very much for the presentation.
Okay, cool. Yeah, there's a lot to discuss. So it's trying to compress it sometimes. Yeah, but I'm available offline as well.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
We'll actually try do another session because it's quite a bit of information and it's difficult to compress, like Yanko said. Jean, if you want us to connect you with someone at ECSA, please do drop your email address there on the chat, and then we'll try and assist you. Cedric Chebelezo, please can you go ahead?
Regards to supervision. If I may ask, am I audible?
Yes.
Yes. If it happens that my direct supervisor is not ECSA registered, can one use an external supervisor that is registered? And how does one go about using an external supervisor if it's possible?
The external supervisor, external, or is it an external indirect supervisor? Cedric?
Can you please repeat that? You are breaking.
I was saying your external supervisor, are you reporting to them directly or is it an indirect external supervisor?
It's an indirect external supervisor. Because the organization I'm in, we have a serious challenge when it comes to professional ECSA registered supervisors. Even if they are there, they are few, and it's a challenge getting them to assist you.
Yeah.
So that's the challenge we have.
One of the ways that some individuals circumvent this is by producing, either having a secondary mentor. So you can do it in the form of an affidavit to say that you had this challenge, so I want to sign off for you, but this person can vouch for you in this manner. So they need to be willing to also vouch for you, and they need to know what it is that you are involved in. So hence, it's very important to get supervisors that can oversee the work that you are doing. Hence, I made the example of the secondment for people to say that if you go to a consultant, a contractor, you will be reporting to someone who's registered, and then you just show according to the organogram that they were then reporting to other people. So yeah, I think you can trust circumvent that by having them sign as a secondary supervisor, but I'll check the requirements and I'll advise via Ntombi to let you guys know.
Thank you,
Okay,
Yanko.
how will I get the feedback? Sorry,
I think drop
Ntombi, how
your
will I get
email
the
in the drop your email in the chat box, please.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. If you can also just provide a brief description of what your inquiry was. Thank you. I'm just going to take the last 5 questions from the people who have currently raised their hands, and then we're just going to close it. Yamgela, please go ahead. Please keep it short.
Hi, Yanko. Hi, Ntombi. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
I hope you are doing good. Just gonna make my question short. I have a long version of the question on the chat. So I just want to, since the agenda of today's meeting is about making the registration easy. So I wanted to share my recent experience and maybe pose a question. So I am a registered PR Techni-Eng. I have recently moved to Ireland. So when I came here, I was fascinated about the remarkable simplicity of their registration procedure, which is Engineers Ireland. So what they do here, they do all their registration procedures online, which makes it simple. Number one, you build up your application before you even apply as a professional. So when you apply as a candidate, you fill in all your details, including your academic transcript. So when you apply as a professional, you don't have to rewrite all of that. Number two, you lodge your CPD points online. I know ECSA has a similar platform, but with this one, you can transfer your CPD points to your application, so you don't have to rewrite everything. To come back to the qualification issue that was discussed, they have a list of all their, or they have a list of all the universities or schools that are accredited by their accords. So you don't have to email or call the council in order to verify your qualification. You can simply check it online, which makes it easier because you don't have to go back and forth sending emails. And they also have an online paying platform, which makes things more easy as well. And then your supervisors also review and send their reviews to the council online.
Yamgela, my apologies for just butting in. Please, can you go straight to your question? Just in the interest of time.
Oh, okay, sorry. So my question is, why don't we have a similar platform with ECSA? I know we already have a beautiful website, so why can't we add that feature to make things easy for us?
I don't represent ECSA, so I can't respond on their behalf in that regard. But I'd like to believe it's something that they look at. I do this in my own personal capacity based on my experience and just trying to help people register, because some of the challenges that I encountered I feel it's challenges that people are encountering. So by sharing my knowledge and my experience, I just feel it's going to help other people overcome those fears and those challenges. I'm not a representative of ECSA.
Oh, okay. All right. Maybe it's not a right platform to ask the question.
Thanks, Yamkela. You can maybe just ask ECSA directly that question, and perhaps it could also just help improve their systems that they've got in place.
Yeah, definitely, because that's why they actually digitizing, like you said, that's why they're digitizing the CPD loading. Maybe it's something they look at in future, but I think propose it to them. I agree.
Okay.
Thank you, Yamkela. Thanks, Yanko.
Okay, thank you.
Moemedi, please go ahead with your question.
Thank you. Sisianko, quick one. If I'm involved in a number of different projects, how do I structure my TERs? Because I'm struggling to write them individually, because I heard that you can only write another TER if your position or if one particular project has ended. Can you just please provide clarity on that? Thank you.
Okay, so like I explained with the way I structured mine, I looked at the roles I was serving. So even though I was, let's say, for example, when I was a technical specialist, besides doing work for Auditor General and eThekwini Transport Authority, I was still doing some work on the side, but I just listed to say the main projects I'll discuss are these, and then some of the other work that I was doing was this. So you can either group it according to the role you are playing, or did you change companies or it's still the same? I think we might, yeah. The best way is with the project, you can have a TR for every project, but I don't know how many that will be. Because remember, it says TRs, it's if your role change, if you switch companies, or if the nature of the work you do change. So even if you're still in the same company, but the nature of your work changed, then you do a new TER. So there's various ways you can look at it. Contact me offline and then we can have a chat a bit more into it.
No problem. Thank you.
If I may also just add, at some point in time, I think I also had about 4 or 5 projects at the same time, but I had the same role throughout. So I just grouped them to say on all of these projects, I'm doing the following: designs, supervision, etc., etc., etc. And then you also just say my degree of responsibility over all of them is B, C, or E, or whatever the case may be. Selasi Ngara, please go ahead with your question.
Yes, thank you so much. Good evening, everyone, and thank you to Yanko and Tombi for this presentation. I just wanted to find out how many times does one typically need to sort of like show competency for the outcomes? Say maybe for outcome 10 in my engineering report, how many times do I need to show that for it to be accepted by ECSA when they're doing the review? And also my second question, which is also linked to that, is just to understand if I have a paragraph in my engineering report which says I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this, do I need to, on each and every separate line on that small column, say outcome 1, or I can simply say outcome 1, 5, 6 for that paragraph, but not necessarily in the line adjacent to that in the paragraph? I don't know if it makes sense what I'm asking.
I understand. Technologist or technician report, you can write your paragraph and say which outcomes you are meeting. And then in terms of your first one, sorry, just remind me quickly.
Yes.
Your first one, Konja, what was that about? Sorry,
yes, I was just asking in terms of my outcomes, if I'm writing my
yes,
engineering
yeah, how
report,
many times?
Yes.
Yes, I remember. Okay, so with the outcomes, remember, with the engineering report, you're only looking at 2 problems at most, 2 projects. So you'll just have a paragraph or whatever looking at outcome 10, for example. So you don't have to keep saying this. Once you've written that paragraph, then you say outcome 10.
Okay.
Yeah, and with the technicians and technologists report, your report, the way it's structured, it forces you to answer those outcomes accordingly. The one that doesn't really have a format is the engineering one. So you would literally have to say, you're now looking at the outcome, and then this is how you handled that outcome.
Okay. Okay. So it's enough to just sort of like show it once if it's like clearly shown.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, if it's a clear thing, you would see, I made this decision based on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it's just 1 or 2 lines, but it's clear. That's it. You don't need to write stories, hence they limit you. One quick one, don't be before we adjourn. In terms, I saw there was something about the word count. There's a reason why they limit your word counts. With the engineering report, because there's no format, whatever you write cannot exceed 2,000 words per TER. So if you have 20 TER, each TER for engineers, you have a word limit of 20 to 2,000 words. For the engineering report, demonstrating all those 11 outcomes, because it's like writing a story, you can't exceed 6,000 words. With the Techni and Techno, Mr. Ngara said, it limits you. It's already written that here you're looking at outcome 1. Say how you did outcome A1 within 100 words. So don't exceed that word limit. There's a reason why they give you those word limits. They want you to get straight to the point, because some of you will then be telling us the history of your company but not saying what is it that you did to demonstrate competence. So make sure you stick to the word limits and get straight to the point. Don't use unnecessary words. Don't use belittling words like I worked on a small TIA. Don't use words like little. Whatever you do is adding value to you demonstrating those competencies.
Okay, no, thank you
Thanks,
so much.
Thanks, Lassie. We're just going to take 2 more questions. Magabongwe, please do send us an email. I'll send you the email address. Polisa Nike, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. One thing I want to understand, because it's a short of time. I want to understand one thing. I'm working for a public sector, and I'm working in the IRA, with the IRRM, that is road maintenance. So how can I do the design? Because actually, I'm just giving an instruction to the constructor, and I'm just monitoring what is happening. But now what I've noticed is that each and every word the mentor said we need to design. How can we design, all of us?
No, I did not say need to design. I said ECSA wants you to demonstrate competence and outcomes. We are moving away from the old system where one had to be in a design office and one had to go to a construction site. We are now looking at the spaces we are in and saying, what is the problem that I need to solve? What is the root cause of this problem? What solutions are available for me to solve this problem? What is the process of elimination that I'm using to solve this problem? It's not saying a design problem or construction problem. It is saying engineering problem. So whatever problem you are working on, if during your routine road maintenance, there is a challenge with maybe the paint you use, what is the process that you go through to determine what is the most durable paint that you can use to mark the roads, for example? That is the problem. Your solution is not just to say repaint. Maybe you're repainting, but you find in 2 weeks' time the paint is coming off, meaning there is a problem with the paint. Are you using water-resistant paint or on whatever surface, or do you need paint that is more durable, that has whatever factors? I'm just doing a silly example, but I want to show you that it's not about saying you worked in a design office. It's about what problems are you encountering that are relevant for the level of your qualification, your undergrad qualification. Are they complex enough for the level that you need to be working at as an engineer, as a technologist, or as a technician? What solutions are available on the market? What do the guideline documents tell you to go about this? Is it something that is common? Is it something that is not uncommon? If it's something that's uncommon, what process did you use to eventually find your solution? So it's not about being in a design office, but the problems that you're encountering and how you are solving them and packaging them.
Thank you, Yako. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yanko. Our last hand was from Charity Muroa.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity. So I just want to understand or ask a question from Yanko. Have you ever had an experience where someone is able to register from tailings operations side of things? Because that's the field where I'm involved in. I'm in tailings operations, and I've noticed that a lot of people that become successful in registrations, they're in the what's this? They are more of consultants than being in operations. Yes, I am on site full time, but the role that we're taking is more managerial than the actual.
I don't know anyone specifically that has registered in that space, but does tailings fall in terms of engineering discipline? Where would you fall under? Would it be like geotech and stuff?
It has geotech, but I think they classify it under environmental.
Okay. I think what I can try to, I think I have an environmental engineer in my contact list. Maybe I can get you in touch with that particular person and they can advise from their experience how they went about it. Because I think you might be having a similar challenge as industrial engineers. So an industrial engineer might also be someone who might be good to help you structure the work that you are doing in the space that you are in. So please drop me your email on LinkedIn.
All right, we'll do so. Thanks.
Thank you, Yanko. Ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of our webinar. Thank you to everyone for joining. We will definitely do have a round 2. If you have any further questions, Yanko has made her LinkedIn available for you to ask questions. If you'd like to be linked with somebody, please send it to my JHB chair email address. I've put it on the chat box. It's jhbchair@scic.org.za, and then we'll just link you up with whoever you need. If you need a mentor, if you need further guidance and all of that and anything, please do reach out to us. Thank you so much. Enjoy your evening further.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.